Who wants to come to my house for cocktails and dinner?
I'm ready.
Right? Today I'm going to be working with bartender trainer, cocktail creator, overall beverage wizard, Jax Donahue, who is going to be telling us some tips and tricks for making cocktails at home.
So the way we usually start off making cocktails too is in a specific order. The reason why we do that is actually to save money. It's the smartest way to do it, and also it's typically the fastest.
To build a cocktail, you start with your bitters, if you're using them. Then you move on to citrus, again, if you're using it. Then you have your sugar, which is usually something like agave or simple syrup, followed by your modifier, which is usually a fortified wine or a liqueur like Curacao or absinthe. After that, you add your base spirit, which is your main alcohol in the cocktail. If you are going to lengthen your cocktail with something like soda water, you would add it then. 5 things.
5 things. Total.
And that's like kind of the 5 things that make up any cocktail?
Pretty much, yeah. And they're interchangeable too, because if you think about it for these, like for this specific cocktail, technically we only have 3. Because we're using bitters, we're using sugar, and then we're using spirit.
You do this so that if you make a mistake, you're not throwing away the most expensive ingredients.
Essentially.
Oh, see, I spilled.
And that's exactly why we do it over input.
I thought I was a pretty good bartender going into this. I've worked in restaurants, and they would be embarrassed if they saw this. Sorry, guys.
You always have to make sure your cocktail is in balance, because you got to think about it.
Your goal is to get to 0.
Essentially, yeah, in a weird way. It's a weird thing that is a little bit different to get used to.
The key to creating an amazing cocktail is balance. If you change one element, then you have to balance it out by changing another. You can't just expect to throw a bunch of liquid into a glass and have it taste good.
It's really balancing the sweets and the sours or the bitters. So a liqueur is gonna have some sugar coming into it. Usually it's about a half sugar is what we would call that. Okay. So like a lemon, lime, those are full sours. So when you're balancing that out, you want to have equal sour to sweet.
So then each ingredient, if you will, is given like a ratio?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, say I wanted to make like an apricot Collins or something fun like that. I would probably just tweak it. Instead of using 3/4 lemon and 3/4 simple syrup, I would probably just take out a quarter or a half of that simple syrup and then add in about a half of the apricot. And that's it. And that simple twist will make an infinite impact on the actual flavor of the drink, because now we're adding an apricot, but as I said, we haven't really changed the sweetness of the cocktail.
Making a great cocktail is a lot more about chemistry than you'd think. There are a lot of ratios and rules, and once you know the basics, it's pretty easy, but it is definitely important to learn those fundamentals to get it right.
When it has citrus in it, we want to shake it. And so the reason why we shake it is because those ingredients don't typically mix well. Yeah, so we're just talking just juices.
Typically, if you're using citrus in your cocktail, you shake the cocktail. Otherwise, you stir it.
What you're doing in that process, you're still diluting, but you're also aerating at the same time. So it's a lot faster as well, because you got to think about it. Shaking is a lot more rigorous than stirring is.
There is a clear shake technique when making cocktails, and I am terrible at it. It doesn't look as pretty as yours. Luckily, Jax is an expert, so I learned a few things today.
You essentially want to get it right here in tight. The whole purpose of that, you see a lot of bartenders that do this. Problem with that is it's really difficult to do on your rotator cuff for long periods of time.
Okay.
And your back is much stronger and your core is much stronger than your shoulders are independently.
So bartenders are secretly athletes is what you're telling me.
A little bit. So when you're shaking, the whole point of this area is actually to cause the liquid to go backward and forward in the actual tin.
Okay.
And that's the agitation that you want, as well as the dilution. So as you do that, breaks down the ice and aerates the cocktail all at the same time.
Okay.
So this one's already started to melt, so I'm gonna give it a little, a half shake on it.
Usually shake a cocktail for about 8 seconds. Again, it depends on the ice that you're using and how long the cocktail's been sitting and the temperature outside. If it's a hot day, you're gonna shake it for less time, for example.
Normally I would have done a 4-second, but I know it's diluting a little bit.
Jax is crazy knowledgeable about cocktails. And he's not just knowledgeable about cocktails, he's actually really passionate about cocktails.
A lot of people don't realize why ice and dilution is such a big deal for cocktails. If anybody ever at home wants to try it, and or you ever want to try it, try making a gin martini with just really cold vermouth and really cold gin. And it will taste vastly different than a gin martini you'd order at a bar. And the reason being is because we dilute it. And the dilution actually opens up a lot of the flavor characteristics of the spirit.
So ice doesn't just cool down a cocktail, it also provides dilution, which you don't want to water down cocktail, obviously. But that's not what we're going for here. What we're going for is just a little bit of dilution so that you get just the right amount of flavor. It tones it down just enough so that you can really enjoy the cocktail without too much harsh alcohol.
That's why everybody is so ice crazy. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, do you make your ice at home? Do you have the clearest ice? Do you have all those things? When we're diluting cocktails, we actually have a time frame for which they're diluted. We know. Consistently, when you serve a cocktail on one by one,
I gotta get my motion right here.
Should be about 15 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of the benchmark that we use. And you can tell by dilution, also based on how the actual cocktail is going, or what we call the wash line. That makes sense. So that's how high it actually gets.
I didn't realize how important your ice was in a cocktail. You have a bunch of different varieties. You can do crushed, you can do rocks, you can do 1-to-1, which are like the 1 inch by 1 inch squares. They each have a different surface area, which affects dilution.
One of the things I do want to show you pretty quickly is how to peel. A lot of people do this incorrect. I cut the tip of my pinky off a couple times in my first few years of bartending. I think almost everybody has, and that's because of not doing that properly. So, and what you're gonna do is you're actually gonna kind of dig into the peeler here, but put your thumb on the back of the fruit. See how you have control over it right now? All right, so when you're actually peeling it, all I want you to do is use this hand to move the fruit. And then what you'll do is take the thumb, put it on top of the peel, and then hold it and be done. So we're gonna express these though, so it'll finish off that old fashioned. Basically, you want to take it, if you're talking like old school children folding, we're talking hot dog fold. You want to make sure that the outside of the peel is there, and you can actually see in the air pretty much.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So those are all just essential oils that are coming off. The other thing is the ending expression also kind of finishes that off. That's just to get all the rest of it. Yeah, that's why you hear it be called a twist, or you see people oftentimes do that. That's kind of the ending move.
If you're really new to making cocktails, try starting with the basics. Make a really good basic cocktail.
A lot of people think that, buying a really fancy cocktail book, they can make all those things at home. I always urge people to look at classics first because it's where we all started. We make all these fancy modifiers and stuff now because we kind of harness the original and now we can play off of them.
Try a Collins, try an old fashioned. Once you get really good at those basic fundamentals, then you can add in or swap out other ingredients to give them fun twists. So for example, you can add raspberries to your Collins.
So usually when you're making a single cocktail, 3 or 4 berries is typically what you'll need. It depends on how ripe they are, where they're at in the season and all that good stuff. So you just want to give those a little quick muddle. And essentially all I'm trying to do is break down those cell walls and give us a little bit of that flavor, a little bit of that color. So now, yet again, we talk about tools. If you're gonna do something like this, definitely have a strainer at home because any raspberries, any kind of berry nonsense, it's gonna get everywhere and it gets gross. And so there you go.
That one's beautiful. Playing with these different ingredients is going to give your cocktails a whole new flavor. A really easy way to create a new cocktail is to just switch out the alcohol. If you're making a margarita, for example, using mezcal instead of tequila will give it a whole new flavor profile. So it's still the same amount of ingredients, you're just swapping the alcohol and suddenly you have something new.
Give these both a try and see the flavor difference.
All right, so I'm gonna do original first.
Sure. Classic margarita. Clean, simple, nothing, just literally agave and
really
citrus.
Good though.
Yeah.
All right.
Now this is the amp up.
All right. Okay, that's insane how different they taste.
But they're very, very similar. Agave spirit change, so tequila to mezcal, and infusion in the mezcal. And then the only other difference is literally style of citrus and then style of modifier.
Another way to spice up your cocktail game is to add an infused liquor, which is basically just taking flavors and adding it to the alcohol itself before you create the cocktail.
So when you're making cocktails, classically they usually have between 1.5 ounces of base spirit to 2.5. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Mostly modifiers after that, usually. You really don't go higher than 2. And part of that is for the guest. The whole point of you making them a beverage is not to get them schnammered. You want them to have a good time. It's more of a social lubricant rather than like a hammer to the head. Because of that, actually, we are starting to lean more towards cocktails called shims. A lot of the time, we'll mix in partial bases with other modifying liqueurs or fortified wines and things like that to create lighter cocktails that have less alcohol, so that way people can enjoy more of them.
Not everyone is a fan of super strong cocktails, and if you are looking for something a little lighter, try a shim. They are lower in alcohol, but still give you all of those really nice balanced flavors so that you can enjoy more cocktails longer without feeling the effects.
Bartending has more become, at this point in time, a mix of chemistry and also kitchen. You know, I probably do as much prep as a lot of kitchen guys do, as do the rest of my team.
It was such an eye-opening experience. How much goes into crafting these cocktails, how much detail and passion and energy that they put into creating one little cocktail. It was really impressive to see.
Well, thank you for popping in.
For a reason. Cheers.
Cheers.
I learned so much about making cocktails today. I hope you did too. Go ahead and pour yourself a drink. You can watch more of our videos over here or find all of our videos by subscribing.